Hi guys, this is a video on how to do the welt pocket. Here I have my back pant. I have a drill hole half an inch away from the edge of the seam of my welt opening, and it is a quarter of an inch in between both lines. I have it on the opposite side too. I have the notches for my dart and my awl hole, and over here I have my back pocket bag. I also have the same line that I need for my welt opening, but down here I have the notch for where my welt facing is going to go. Over here I have my welt facing and the notch for where it matches my back pocket, and I have my welt over here. So from this notch, this awl hole, I am going to go out and draw basically my half an inch seam allowance. This marker is erasable, so whenever I steam my fabric, it does disappear, the markings disappear. Another half an inch line, and then I'm going to do a line connecting those lines at a quarter inch seam allowance from my awl hole, basically drawing on my welt onto my back pant. I'm done with drawing the rectangle, which is a half an inch seam allowance away from the awl hole and a quarter inch on both sides of the awl hole. I'm going to do the same thing to my bag.
Once again, going a half an inch and drawing the line. Same here. Quarter inch seam allowance. Another one on the other side.
Drawing the rectangle on, so I'm going to align my back pocket bag with my back pant, making sure that they match where my awl holes are and that the notch at the top matches.
There we go.
The next step is for you to take your welt and press it. Here's my welt. So I'm going to fold this 1 inch over, so it's going to be 2 inches on this side and 1 inch at the bottom. I'm making sure that it is exactly an inch. I'm going to press it. It's been pressed. See what I said about my ink disappearing when I press it? No pink highlighter. The next step is to draw a half an inch line on from the folded edge. Take that and align it to your pocket bag and pocket opening in the back, making sure that your welt is even on both sides of the welt line. So if I measure this, that is 1.5 on the other side. That is also 1.5. So bring this down to match the bottom of your welt. You want the half an inch line to match the bottom of your welt. And I'm going to place 2 pins in that. So I'm going to place an actual mark there so I can see. And this is where the second one ends. I am about to begin sewing. I made sure that I have markings for where my welt starts and where it ends, and I have 2 pins holding it down. Let me move them a little bit inwards just to make sure that I'm catching the bottom. When I move this and flip it over, you can see how I can see my welt stitching still. Straight stitch from this point, ended at this point. Once again, to get to this point, I matched my back pant to my back pocket bag, and then I took my welt facing, pressing it at 1-inch seam allowance, and then aligning my welt facing to the markings for my pocket bag. You can see the pink lines, my pocket opening I mean. And then I just sewed a 1/2-inch seam allowance. I can still lift this up, I can still lift this up. I only sewed from the beginning to the ending of the pocket opening. And then after I did that, I pressed a seam flat. I pressed the seam flat down at a 1/2-inch seam allowance. Basically that 1-inch little flap that I had, I pressed it down, and then I drew the opening, the markings for my pocket opening, right? 1/2 inch away from my all holes, of course. And what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to sew the gray areas, which is basically the rest of my pocket opening. So I'm going to sew here, pivot, when I get here, pivot again, and come down here. I am not going to stitch this part. Now I'm going to cut my pocket bag opening by cutting on the 1/4 inch seam allowance line that I drew and 1/2 inch to the edge of my pockets. Making sure that I get all 3 layers, which is my welt, my pocket bag, and my my back pant. Snipping to the corners. For the final trick, all I'm going to do is flip my welt into my back. Is almost done. It's done and pressed. I'm gonna flip it inside out so you can see what it looks like. Basically, I cut it, and then this is what it looked like before I flipped it. And I flipped it and tucked it in, and then I pressed it. To finish my welt pocket, I am going to lift up the side, basically coming to the back. You can see my pocket bag. Coming to the back. I'm lifting up the side and I'm simply stitching my welt to this little triangular tab, and I'm going to do the same thing on here. If you wanted to put top stitches on both sides of your welt, you can do that, but I recommend sewing these two pieces, well, all these three pieces, four actually, 1, 2, 3, 4 layers together at a 1/2 inch seam allowance, literally right here.
Making sure you catch the folds.
Look, you can see my welt is nice and done. To complete my pocket, I am going to attach my pocket facing to my pocket bag, making sure that my edges are clean. If you have access to an overlock machine, overlock that edge and then you can top stitch it down. If you don't, fold the edge by 1/4 and 1/4 on the other side and then top stitch them down. When you're top stitching, make sure that your notches are aligned. I folded with my edges. Now I will top stitch and then I will complete my pocket bag.
By simply folding it over. So can you do this?
Attach my pocket facing. Now I am going to sew my entire bag together, making sure that I am catching the seam for my welt 2. On both sides of my pocket. With my back pocket, as you can see, I have a couple loose threads. That's fine, I can take them off. I can put my hand in, and when I open it up I can see my pocket facing as opposed to just seeing my pocket bag. To complete this, all I'm going to do is do a top stitch, a basting stitch that is 1/4 inch seam allowance, holding my pocket bag to my waist so I don't have any problems when I am attaching this to my waistband. And this is how you sew a welt pocket.